Hello everyone, welcome to today's session. Good evening to one and all. All right, so I hope there are no technical issues or anything. So, yeah, today we are continuing the UPSC CSE Ancient India lecture series. And in the first two lectures, we have already seen a very basic introduction into history, into ancient India. And then in the previous lecture, day before yesterday, we actually looked into the various stone ages. Okay, we talked about Paleolithic age, Mesolithic age, Neolithic age, etc. etc. We also looked into Chalcolithic age. So today we are starting with Harappan civilization. Only one chapter today. It's a lengthy chapter. The civilization of Harappa. Okay, the Indus Valley civilization, also known as Harappan civilization. So after this, in the next class, we will see about Aryans and early Vedic age and things like that. Okay, so very important portion for your UPSC, and this today I'm going to be speaking strictly in adherence to this textbook. All right, this lecture series is actually based on this particular textbook, but for UPSC prelims and all, please do study. One second. Okay. All right. Okay, so for UPSC prelims and all, you will have more. You will have to study much more, point-wise details and all. There is another book called as Ancient India by again the same author R.S. Sharma. I mean, it is an extrapolation of this particular NCERT book that could be useful for you. There are other textbooks also there for Ancient India, but rather than reading a lot from different textbooks, study the basic textbooks very thoroughly and try to answer more and more mock series and all. That would be more helpful for you in a UPSC prelims perspective. Okay, so let's begin this session without any further ado. I am Madhav Sankar Warrier. Welcome to Madhav Sankar classes. Okay, so the chapter for today, the Harappan civilization. So to the newcomers to this channel, this is how it works. You can ask any questions regarding to the subject that I'm teaching, and you can place that question in the YouTube live chat. All right, and I will get back to you once I see it. Okay, I won't be looking into the live chat, always. I will look into it after like 3 slides or 4 slides, something like that. Okay, so be patient, put your question and please wait. I will definitely get back to you. If I know the answer, I will tell you it immediately. Otherwise, in the next class, I will clarify your doubt. Okay, so the Harappan civilization. So the first, we have to understand the basic idea where Harappan civilization existed. What was its geographical extent, etc. etc. So in the previous class itself, we studied a lot about various kinds of periods in Stone Age and all. At that time, we said that these sites are very much spread throughout India. Right? We had Neolithic sites in South India, we had it in West India, North India, Eastern part, etc. etc. In the subcontinent, Pakistani area, all these places. So what is the exact geographical extent of Harappa, or say the Harappan civilization? Okay, so the historians has came to an conclusion that Harappan civilization is older than Chalcolithic cultures. Okay, Harappan culture, I won't call Harappan as civilization. Harappa is not a civilization, it is a culture. Indus Valley is the civilization. Okay, so Harappan culture is actually older than Chalcolithic cultures. That we already established in the previous class. Alright, but even then, Harappans knew and they used bronze. So Harappan civilization, Harappan culture or Indus Valley civilization is a bronze using or a Bronze Age civilization. Alright, and this is actually much more developed compared to the Chalcolithic period that came afterwards. Okay, the Chalcolithic period actually came after Harappan civilization, after the demise of Indus Valley civilization. But even then, Harappan civilization was more mature and more developed compared to the Chalcolithic cultures that came later. Alright, so why is this civilization known as Harappan civilization? Okay, I mean, we all know why it is called Indus Valley civilization, because it is in the banks of the river Indus and its tributaries. Okay, it is in the Indus River basin. That is why it is called as Indus Valley civilization. Why is it known as, sometimes it's also called Harappan civilization. Okay, it is supposed to be called as Harappan culture, but people use this very, synonymously. They call it Harappan civilization also. So why is this civilization called as Harappan civilization or Harappan culture? Very simple answer. Because the first site that was discovered, or the type site of this civilization, was the modern site of Harappa. Okay, in 1921, Dayaram Sahni, okay, this is the historian or archaeologist who actually discovered this particular site. So Harappa became the type site for this civilization, and that is why it is known as Harappan civilization. There is no other logic for that. And roughly, it extended from Shivalik in the north. Okay, this is the very rough extent of this civilization. Shivaliks in the north. I hope you know what is Shivaliks is. It is the part of Himalayas. Himachal, Himadri, and all these other ranges. So from Shivaliks in the north, Arabian Sea in the south, and from Makran coast of Baluchistan in the west to Meerut in the northeast. Okay, so very huge expanse of land. So from this itself, we can understand that Harappan civilization or the Indus Valley civilization extended to the major part of North India, some part of West India, and also in the modern day Pakistan. Okay, otherwise, Balochistan won't be there. All right. Also, this civilization had such a huge geographical extent that it was larger than Egypt and Mesopotamia. Okay, these are contemporary civilizations. Egyptian civilization, Mesopotamian civilization, all existed almost simultaneously, not exactly parallel, but still there were overlaps between them, among them. Okay, and among all these, the biggest geographical extent is attributed to Indus Valley civilization. Okay, so there is an early Harappan civilization, then there is a mature phase or a flourishing phase, and finally the late phase or the disintegration of Harappa. So, in its mature phase, okay, when the civilization reached its peak, there were a few cities in Harappa which became very, very prominent. Okay, the archaeologists and historians believe that some of the Harappan cities, there are plenty of sites. Out of them, some of them achieved very huge success and very much power in the mature phase of Harappan civilization. These cities include Harappa, Mohenjo-daro. Mohenjo-daro, it means, it actually means the land of dead. Okay, Mohenjo-daro or the mound of dead. Then Chahundaro, Lothal. Lothal is a place in Gujarat, very famous for its dockyard. Okay, we will study about all that later. Then one more important point to note here about Lothal. It is actually situated in the Gulf of Cambay, not Gulf of Kutch. Okay, immediately when people think about Gujarat, the first thing that comes to your mind is Gulf of Kutch. It is not Gulf of Kutch there. It is actually Gulf of Cambay, where Lothal is situated. Alright, then Kalibangan, another very famous site in Rajasthan. Banavali, Haryana. Surkajandor and Surkotiada, both having a beautiful citadel and all. So these are the prominent sites in the mature or the flourishing stage of Harappan civilization. In the later phase, we come across some more sites such as Rangpur, Roshdi, etc. etc. Okay. One very important site, we have to study about all these sites individually, that we will come to later. But to quickly give you a very brief introduction, Dholavira is one another site we have to consider, and Dholavira is actually located in the Kutch area of Gujarat. Okay, so Lothal is in Gujarat, but it is in the Gulf of Cambay. And Dholavira also in Gujarat, but it is in the Gulf of Kutch region, the Kutch area. Okay, don't confuse it between these two. One is Cambay, other is Kutch, but both are in modern day Gujarat. Alright, but Dholavira is important for one other very important reason, because it has this Harappan fortification, and all the three phases of Harappan culture can be seen here. Okay, the early phase, the mature phase, and the later Harappan phase. All these three phases can be seen in Dholavira. Okay, evidences have been found from this particular site. So a very important site. Dholavira is also important because we find a water management system in Dholavira, a structure for water management and all. Okay, and These three phases of Harappan culture can also be seen in one other site, and that is Rakhi Garhi. Rakhi Garhi is a site in Haryana, and it is much larger than Dholavira. And Rakhi Garhi is that site where we see all the three phases of Harappan culture, other than Dholavira. Okay, but among all the Harappan sites, the largest one is Mohenjo-daro. It is not in India, it is in Pakistan. Okay, I hope you got a very brief idea about all these sites and all. Don't get confused or anything. This is a very broad geographical extent. That's all I'm trying to say in this slide. Okay, so from Shivaliks in the north to Arabian Sea in the south, from Makran coast in Balochistan in the west to the Meerut region in the east. So that entire expanse of the northern portion of Indian subcontinent was once the flourishing civilization of Indus Valley. All right. So now we come to specifics of Indus Valley civilization or the Harappan culture. Good evening, Tamil Selvan. Good evening, Vasantalakshmi. Good evening, Satya. Welcome to the class. So town planning and structures, very important thing. I hope you have seen this image somewhere. Okay, definitely not in your NCERTs. This image is actually shown in the movie Mohenjo-daro. Have you seen this movie? A very famous movie by Hrithik Roshan and Pooja Hegde. So in that movie, when Hrithik Roshan travels from his home to the city of Mohenjo-daro, the first introduction of that city is this particular image. Okay, so there is this upper city or the citadel, whatever you want to call it. This part, the high structures and all. And then you have the lower city. I think all of you who have seen this film after studying for UPSC would have noticed this factor very well. Okay, so you have the upper city and the lower city. So I'll come to that. Before it, both Harappa and Mohenjo-daro had a citadel or an acropolis. Okay, this is the upper city is known as the citadel, sometimes also called as acropolis. And historians believe that this is the place where very influential sections of the society at that time lived. Probably the sovereign class, I mean the rulers of Harappa or say Mohenjo-daro or whatever. Okay, so the sovereigns of the civilization may have been the people, or the rich class will be the people who have lived here in the upper section of the city. There is a lower town also, and this lower town is made of brick houses and all, and obviously it could be the place where ordinary people lived. Okay, again think about that film, try to relate with that film. There are plenty of inaccuracies in that film, but still in these factors you can always relate to it. Okay, there is that citadel where all the influential sections lived, and there is this lower city where the common people lived. Okay, and the whole thing is arranged in a grid system. Okay, what is a grid system? Grid system means parallel lines interconnecting each other. So this is basically a grid, right? You know this grid from your graph sheet and all. So Harappan cities were actually arranged in grid system with the roads cutting across one another in right angles. Okay, I will show you another picture. Again from the film Mohenjo-daro, one of its posters. You can take a closer look at it when you get time. But just look at this planning of the city. If you look at it closely, you will understand that all these cities, all these buildings are arranged in a proper line structure. It is not like scrambling here and there, but there is a proper line. Look at this. Every building here is in a straight line. See, you can see all these structures. Everything wherever you look, you can see it. Everything is in a straight line, parallel line, cutting each other in 90 degrees. So overall, a grid pattern is very visible in town planning of Harappan cities, at least the prominent cities. Okay, so here also you can see an aerial view. This is a constructed image. Okay, it's not the real thing. It's a constructed image. You can see the citadel area here, which is very mighty and flourished, the upper city, and then the lower town where the common folk lived, the whole other area. Okay, now among all the structures in Harappa or say in the Harappan civilization, there is one particular structure which is very much important for us, and that is a very famous structure in the city of Mohenjo-daro, which is known as the Great Bath. Okay, Great Bath is located in Mohenjo-daro. And Great Bath is actually very important for our studies for a lot of reasons. First of all, beautiful brickwork. Okay, you can see this. This is an real image of Great Bath. Okay, modern day historians have uncovered this structure and they have taken an image of this particular structure. You can see the brickwork. Okay, very beautiful brickwork. And the measurements are not important for UPSC, but for state PSCs and all, it could be asked. So you can roughly take note of it. 11.88 into 7.01 millimeter and 2.43 meter deep. Okay, and there are stairs in both sides of this structure. Okay, you can see the steps that is going up from this Great Bath into the upper embankments. And in both sides of this structure, you will see rooms for changing clothes. Okay, if you take a closer look here, you can see that there existed some structures in these regions and all. So historians believe that probably these are the rooms where one could change their clothes, etc., while using this water structure, like a modern day swimming pool structure where you have facilities to change your clothes and all in the adjacent rooms. Okay, and the water to this particular structure is actually drawn from a well in the adjacent room, and the outlets form the corner of the bath, lead to a drain. Primarily, this structure is intended for ritual bathing. Okay, we do not come across any temples at all in Harappan civilization, but we come across some religious signs and all. Okay, religious signs or religious architecture or whatever. And this one, Great Bath, is one such aspect that is associated with a ritualistic system. And historians believe that this Great Bath, this structure, is actually used for ritual bathing. Again, think about the film, and you might remember that ceremony that happened in this Great Bath. It's also shown in that film. Anyway, the one other area where you can see such a huge tank is Tholavira. Okay, in Tholavira also you come across such a huge tank, but the biggest one, the most important one for us is the one in Mohenjo-daro. Okay, so the important points to remember here is it has a beautiful brickwork, especially the lower floor of Great Bath is covered off or constructed using burnt bricks. Okay, so that is very important. Then presence of changing rooms in the side of this particular structure. Okay, then the purpose of this structure. We do not come across much religious structures or ritualistic structures from Harappan civilization, but in the Great Bath is one such structure that is used for religious purposes. Moving on. So in Mohenjo-daro, apart from this Great Bath, we come across some very important other structures also. For example, the largest building in Mohenjo-daro is a granary, a huge granary. So what is a granary? Granary is basically like a godown where you collect all the cereals and all the grains and all and keep it for maybe for future use or maybe collect as tax or whatever. So this is the largest structure that we see in the city of Mohenjo-daro. Okay, the dimensions are also given here, not so much important for us. Okay, then as I have already mentioned, some of the Harappan cities have a citadel, that is the upper town, separating connection between the well and influential people and the common man. So the citadel of Harappa is arranged in such a way that there is a clear division in this site. Okay, again, we will talk about social divisions in the upcoming slides, but for now understand that there is a clear division between influential sections and the ordinary man in a Harappan town or a Harappan city. Alright, so here we see a series of brick platforms formed the basis of 2 rows of 6 granaries. So in Harappa, there is I am not talking about the Harappan civilization, I am talking about the site Harappa. Okay, so in the site of Harappa, we come across 2 rows of 6 granaries each. So a total of 12 granaries can be found in the city of Harappa, located in the citadel portion. Alright, but in Mohenjo-daro, there is one huge granary. In the city of Harappa, all these 12 granaries together forms an area which is equal to this one. that existed in Mohenjo-daro. But this is a separate building. That's it. That's the difference. All right. As I have already mentioned, Harappan civilization or the cities in Harappa used a lot of burnt bricks. Burnt bricks was very popular in Harappan cities. This is very much unlike the contemporary civilizations. In other civilizations which existed during this time, for example, in Egypt, okay, we do not come across burnt bricks. Most of the structures in Egyptian civilization was actually built using dried bricks, which means it's not that much advanced. Okay, dried bricks means, just making a brick out of something, a clay or something, and then drying it and using it as such. But in Harappa, these bricks are actually burned, which means it is much more sophisticated and much more user friendly, much more lasting also. Clear? So from all these things, it's very easy to understand that Harappan civilization was one of the most advanced civilizations in the world at that time. But we find the use of baked bricks in one other civilization, that is Mesopotamia. In the Sumerian cities of Mesopotamia, we come across burnt bricks. Okay, but in Egypt, we do not find it. Clear? Now, coming to the houses on Harappan civilization, each and every house, large or small, all of them had its own courtyard and bathroom. Okay, all the Harappan houses, small or big, whatever, it had its own courtyard and its own bathroom. So, I mean, even now there are in places in India where houses do not have a bathroom of its own. Okay, I mean, a toilet of its own. So, there has been a huge campaign like Swachh Bharat Abhiyan and all, were focusing on all these things. But remember, about 3000 years, say, or 2000 years back, there existed a civilization in which every house had a bathroom of its own. In Kalibangan, another site, okay, which I've already mentioned earlier, in Kalibangan, many houses had their own wells. Clear? So, one of the water harvesting structures, or say one of the water supplying structures in Harappan society was actually wells. We also come across drains. Okay, there is a very beautiful drainage pattern that existed in Harappan city. Again, adjacent to the roads which run parallel and all, a very well maintained drainage system. And this drainage was not open. Okay, it was properly covered using bricks or stone slabs. So just think about it. The city of Harappa, or the cities in Harappan civilization, we have buildings which are arranged in proper grid system. We have a very well developed drainage system. Every house had a courtyard and a bathroom of its own. Okay, then we have structures built using burnt bricks. We have wells, which means we have adequate measures to harvest water. So overall, overall a very well developed civilization considering the time of its existence. Such development was not seen in any of its contemporary civilizations like, say, Egypt or Mesopotamia or whatever. These are some pictures that is given in your NCERT old textbook, and here this map shows you a very broad extent of Harappan civilization. Okay, so this entire north and northwestern India. So a huge extent is covered by this civilization, and that is why geographically Harappan civilization is the largest among all its contemporaries, bigger than Egypt, bigger than Mesopotamia, etc. Okay, now we go to agriculture. But any questions? So from the division of towns, can we say that there was inequality in society as we saw in Chalcolithic period? Definitely. Okay, I mean, I will come to that. There is another slide that is coming up about social inequalities in Harappa. At that time, I will explain it more. But yeah, obviously there is the division. Again, think about the movie, and that is true. Okay, if you want to, when Hrithik Roshan tries to enter the upper town, you know how it's done. Okay, in the movie and all. So there is clear division between the ruling class or the sovereign people and the ordinary man. Anyway, agriculture. So in modern day, okay, think about the northwest of India. Northwest of India today, okay, as we speak, it is not so much of a fertile area. It is either semi-arid or it is arid, right? And especially areas like Rajasthan and all, we have the Thar Desert, for example. Okay, very arid region, not at all good for agriculture, very dry, not suitable for any kind of cultivation. And same goes for most of the northwestern part of India. Clear, if it wasn't for the river Indus, forget it. There is no agriculture possible in that area. Fertility is also very low. But way back then, during the time of Indus Valley civilization, this was not the condition. About 3000 years back, or about the time of Indus Valley civilization, Indus region was fertile. Alright, Indus region had more natural vegetation which contributed to rainfall. Clear, during those times, unlike modern day northwest India, that region had much more natural vegetation. And this existence of natural vegetation facilitated rain. Okay, in the younger classes, we have studied that these trees are very important for rain. Right? So if you cut down all the trees and contribute to deforestation, then rains will also go away. We have studied that in our younger classes. Same thing happened here. Back then, there were plenty of natural vegetation, which means it facilitated rain. So obviously, there is a water source. Okay, and the river Indus is also there. So all in all, the land was much more fertile than what is it today. It was not arid or semi-arid at that point of time. But eventually, due to the extension of destruction of these trees and natural vegetation for various purposes, including agriculture, large-scale grazing, supply of fuel, etc., etc., the fertility of this region started to decrease, and eventually the region became very much arid and infertile. Okay, so the large-scale cutting down of natural vegetation for the purposes of agriculture, for for large-scale grazing, or for the purposes of achieving fuel, all these contributed to the destruction of natural vegetation, which eventually contributed to the lack of rainfall over time, over a period of 3000 years. Okay, so the most important reason why Indus Valley civilization region was fertile back in those times was the annual inundation of Indus. Okay, I mean, yeah, obviously there was rainfall and all, etc., etc., natural vegetation contributing to all that. But still, among all the reasons, Indus River was the lifeline of Harappan civilization, undoubtedly. Okay, or Harappan culture, more accurately, Harappan culture. Just like Nile River was for Egypt, Indus River provided the life support for Indus Valley civilization. Indus is the longest river of Himalayan origin, and it had its own tributaries and all distributaries also, and it gave water and supplies to all the region through which it flowed. And occasionally Indus River used to flood also. There is an annual flooding process. Whenever a river floods, obviously it causes a lot of calamities and all, but it also deposits a lot of alluvial and very fertile soil in its banks. So this annual inundation of river Indus, caused due to the flooding and all, provided a very fertile topsoil, which has been eroded all the way from the Himalayas and through the entire Indian stretch. So this availability of very fertile soil in the Indus plain also facilitated agriculture. Clear? So based on their the climatic pattern and weather patterns and all, in those times the agriculturists in the Indus Valley civilization sowed seeds in the floodplains in November. Okay, they were into winter crops. They sowed the seed in the month of November and they harvested it in the month of April, just before the next flood. Okay, very soon the next flood will come. So between the gaps of two floods, they reaped their seeds and they harvested the yield. Wheat and barley were the most prominent agricultural products. Okay, wheat and barley. There are other products also which we will be studying later, but most prominently wheat and barley were the staple crops that were grown. But we do not come across any kind of evidence as far as a hoe or a plowshare is concerned. Okay, we have not gotten any kind of full-fledged plowshare or say hoe. But we have discovered some furrows in the pre-Harappan phase at Kalibangan. Okay, furrows are, if there a furrow has been discovered, then obviously it means agriculture of some sort has to be practiced. Clear? But a full-fledged plowshare like the ones we have in the modern days is completely absent in Harappa. We have not found yet a full life-size model so far. However, agriculture has been had to be practiced. Historians and archaeologists believe that Harappans knew the art of agriculture and they did all these things. So they should have some kind of material to plow through the soil. Right? Without a proper kind of tool, agriculture is not possible. You can't do it with your hands. So for all practical purposes, historians believe that Harappans probably used wooden plowshare. Okay, Indus Valley civilization does not know about iron. Okay, we will come to that. But for now, please take it, understand that Indus Valley people did not know the existence of iron. So iron plowshare is completely out of the picture. But still, some kind of mechanism or tool should have been used for plowing the soil. And for all practical purposes, historians believe that that structure or that tool would have been made out of wood only. And probably drawn by an oxen, sometimes also camels. Okay, camels were also prevalent in that region. Obviously, even now, in the Thar Desert region, we have the camels. So these animals were used for agricultural purposes. And for harvesting purposes, they used stone sickles. Okay, rather than the iron sickle or a steel sickle that we have now, back in those days, stone sickles were used for harvesting. Okay, now we have tools, we got the soil. So what is the method for irrigation? That is the next question. Obviously, we have the rain, yeah. We have the Indus River, also fine. We have wells in individual houses. Right? All these things are fine, but still we need a proper irrigation system if agriculture is to be done in plentiful. So Gavarbans or nalas, it's like a pond. Okay, these are small water structures like our modern day pond and all. So Gavarbans or nalas enclosed by dams were used by Harappans for storing water. Okay, India has a monsoonal system. So rains are very seasonal. Okay, it's not like we get rains throughout the year. That doesn't happen. Now it is supposed to be monsoon season and we haven't seen rains for a week now. Okay, so it is not something that we can completely depend on. So you have to have a proper adequate irrigation facility if you have to have a plentiful agriculture. So nalas or gabarbans were used by Harappans enclosed in dam-like structures for their agriculture. But we do not come across any channel or canal irrigation. Okay, we have no evidence of a channel or a canal irrigation in Indus Valley civilization. Now, how or what were their yield? Okay, agriculture is done. They have harvested a lot of crops. So how is the yield? Is it enough to produce a surplus, or is it just to for bare subsistence purposes? How was the yield back then in the Indus Valley times? The thing is, in Indus Valley civilization, there were sections of people who were agriculturists. There were people who engaged in artisanal work. There were people who engaged in administrative work, probably. There were people who engaged in other kinds of activities. So only a few amount of people, only a section in the society were actually agriculturists. But they had to provide for the entire town or entire area. So naturally, the yield should be high. Okay, so they should be able to produce sufficient food grains, not only for their inhabitants, but also for the town people. So agriculture is obviously done in the rural setup, in the rural area. Okay, you can't have an vast agricultural plot in the center of the city. That is not possible. So usually, just like now, agriculture was back then also done in the outskirts of the cities or maybe in the rural areas. So the production from these regions is not just for subsistence of that region, but also for providing to the town people. So surplus had to be produced. Okay, and the cheap crops that were produced at that time, already I have informed you, we have wheat, we have barley, and along with that we have rye, peas, and some other products also. If we go to Lothal, okay, Lothal, the very famous dockyard of Harappa in the state of modern day Gujarat, we have evidences that people grew rice also. Okay, we find remains of this rice from Lothal. So we know that Harappans knew about rice. Clear? Now, during those times, just like what we studied in medieval India and all, even in back during those times, taxes were paid using grains or cereals. We have already established the fact that there are people who are sovereigns. Okay, there are well and influential people in the society, and then there are common men. So we have already established the fact that there is some kind of an administrative structure. It is not like a nomadic society. Okay, you have settled agriculture. There is somebody who is ruling, or somebody who has the power in the society, and then there are the common folk. So in order to maintain such a large city very successfully, you have to have some rules and regulations. So the system of taxation was there during those times also. At least historians believe so. And we do not have any evidence of any metallic money or coins or anything. So historians believe that taxes were paid using cereals. And these cereals, which are obtained as taxes from the peasants, were stored in these huge granaries. That is the purpose of these granaries, which we found in Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. Alright, I mean, obviously, such huge granaries cannot or would not have been maintained by private individuals. Okay, it should be a government building, or I mean, we are not sure about the system of government or anything, but it should be a building which is collectively owned. We can say that, right? So historians believe that the cereals which are obtained as taxes were all kept in these granaries. Also, and and in the time of emergency, or say in the time of famine or whatever, these extra grains were supplied into the Harappan society, and Harappans had a very good system of administration. Okay, so the cereals can be used during the time of emergencies. This can be surmised from the analogy of Mesopotamian cities where wages were paid in barley. In Harappa, the wages were the taxes were collected in cereals, but in Mesopotamia, the wages were actually paid in barley. Barley was the chief crop in Mesopotamia, so it was paid in barley. Indus people, along with all these cereals, also cultivated cotton. Probably Indus people were the earliest people to cultivate cotton. And because of this, the Greeks called the area Sindon, which is derived from Sindh. Okay, so Indus people of Indus Valley civilization knew about cotton also. Very important. Along with all the cereals and grains that they cultivated, they also cultivated cotton. Now, we have talked about agriculture. Okay, we have seen the crops that they have cultivated. We have seen the irrigation systems that existed. We have seen how taxes were collected, etc., etc. Okay, what were the climatic conditions that facilitated all these things? So, if you have agriculture, then you should have allied activities. That is very clear. You can't actually expect to plow large fields using human manpower alone. You should have some kind of animal power also invested into your field. So, obviously, Harappans domesticated animals. Among them, the common ones include oxen, buffaloes, goat, sheep, pigs, etc. These are the common animals that were domesticated by Harappans. So, just like now, even in those days, domestication of animals was a very prevalent practice. Evidence of dogs and cats, asses and camels, etc. were also available to historians. Okay, we also have evidences that dogs and cats existed at that time, and Harappans knew about them. Asses and camels probably used for as a ship, ship in the desert. Okay, I mean used for carrying heavy weights and all. Camels, asses, etc. Even today, in modern days also, they are used for the same purposes. Harappans knew about these animals also. But among all these animals, the most favored animal for Harappans were the humped bulls. We have seen the pictures of humped bulls in various Harappan seals that we will be talking about in the upcoming slides. Among all the domesticated animals, humped bulls were the most favorite of Harappans. Okay. Now, evidence of the horse comes from a superficial level of Mohenjo-daro and a doubtful terracotta figurine from Lothal. Okay, evidence of horse. I'm not saying that horses has been discovered or Harappans domesticated horses. What I'm saying is evidence of an animal which could have been a horse is obtained from Mohenjo-daro and from Lothal. Okay, from Lothal we have obtained a terracotta figure of some animal that resembles a horse. Historians are not conclusive about this fact, but it could be a horse. But the most important evidence as far as a horse is concerned are the remains of a horse reported from Surkotera. Surkotera is a place in the west area of Gujarat. From there, we have obtained the remains of a horse. Okay, bones of a horse has been discovered. So from this discovery, historians believe that Harappans knew horse. Okay, they knew the existence of such an animal. But that does not mean horses were domesticated. There is no evidence of domestication of horse from Indus Valley civilization. Clear? Remains of a horse has been found. So Harappans knew about it, but no domestication. Clear? Moving on. Apart from horse, elephants were well known to the Harappans. Okay, I don't think we have seen an elephant in the movie Mohenjo-daro, but still understand that elephants were known to Harappans. And they were also very well acquainted with rhinoceros. That we all know because we have seen that one-horned rhinoceros in the Pashupati seal. We will talk about that in the upcoming slides. But anyway, elephants and rhinoceros were also very well known for Harappans. Mesopotamia produced virtually the same food grains and domesticated the same animals, but Harappans in Gujarat produced rice and domesticated elephants, which is not the case with Mesopotamians. So Mesopotamia and Harappa both are almost contemporary civilizations. Plenty of commonalities between these two civilizations, but one difference in the area of domestication of animals that we see between Harappa and Mesopotamia is that in Harappan civilization we have evidence of rice and domestication of elephants. These two cannot be seen in Mesopotamia. Okay. Now, technology and crafts. Before that, any questions? Do we find guild-like structure in the society? Yes, we have not exactly a guild, but we believe that merchants played a very popular role in Indus Valley civilization. Okay, we are not sure about a Sreni kind of structure or we are not like that, but still, yes, there are sections in the society which practices a common job. Okay, there are sections who are into smithery, there are sections of society who are into agriculture. So in that way, yes, we can find such groups in Harappan society. Any common market for agriculture to sell the surplus produce in urban areas from where it got traded in neighboring cultures? Yes, also correct. We have evidences of that also. Okay, we have plenty of evidences of trade and commerce, both short distance and long distance. So yes, we have certain structures for selling and buying goods. Yeah, they knew about writing as Indus Valley people. Not exactly the same. We are going to talk about Indus Valley writing and all in the upcoming slides. The main thing is Indus Valley script is yet to be deciphered. Okay, but as far as Mesopotamian and Egyptian writings are concerned, it has already been deciphered, and so the historians believe that the script is entirely different. Okay, all of them knew writing, but we have managed to decipher Egyptian and Mesopotamian scripts, but Harappan scripts are yet to be deciphered. Because they are pictographic, and we do not have any lengthy inscriptions from Harappa. We will come to all that in the upcoming slides. Okay, technology and crafts. So we have already established that there is agricultural surplus. Okay, then we have already seen that Harappa is a Bronze Age civilization, which means bronze tools were made. Various other crafts were also practiced. I already told you artisans and craft people lived in the lower part of the city along with the agriculture. So other crafts were also very much prevalent. There was widespread trade and commerce. Okay, so from all these factors, we can conclude that this is actually the first urbanization as far as Indian subcontinent is concerned. First urbanization. Okay, until Harappa, until this Indus Valley civilization in history, we do not come across any such levels of urbanization or any kind of urbanization for that matter in Indian subcontinent or maybe in the world also. So first urbanization as far as Indian subcontinent is concerned is the rise of Harappan civilization. The second one happens during the time of Mauryas. Okay, anyway, this is the first urbanization in Indian subcontinent. This happened in the Bronze Age, which we have already told. So bronze is a metal that is a diffusion of two other metals. Okay, bronze is actually a combination of two other metals. One is copper and other is tin. So naturally, in the northwestern part of India, we do not come across these metals in abundance. So historians believe that Harappans brought copper from the Khetri copper mines, modern day Khetri copper mines in Rajasthan, and also from parts of Afghanistan. Okay, that is number one. As far as tin is concerned, they would have probably got it from Afghanistan. Clear? So this again establishes that there was trade, long distance trade from Harappa to other parts of the subcontinent. It's very clear because bronze is a metal that is combination of two other metals which are not available in the native area of Harappa, or even if it is available only in a very small quantity. But for all practical purposes, we have come across all lot of bronze tools from Harappan society, which obviously means these metals should have been imported from somewhere else. From that, we can establish that there has been a proper trade and commerce relationship between Harappan civilization and other parts of Indian subcontinent. But then again, because of the lack of availability of tin, okay, or because of the lack of abundance of tin, most of the Harappan bronze structures or most of the Harappan bronze tools were actually made with very small percentage of tin. Okay, the content of tin in Harappan bronze tools are very less, solely because of the fact that tin is not cheaply available or easily available in Harappan region. Then in Mohenjo-daro, we have found a piece of woven cotton. And we have also found some textile impressions on several objects. Okay, when you take a cloth and you press it against your skin, or maybe press it against a clay, okay, a palette of clay, the impression of that cloth will occur in your skin, right? Okay, in the skin or clay or whatever. So historians have found similar impressions in many artifacts that were obtained from Harappan civilization. So from all these things, they have concluded to the fact that Harappans knew about textiles. Alright, spindle holes were used for spinning and weavers wove cloth for wool and cotton. Here already we have gotten a woven cotton piece from Mohenjo-daro, and then we have plenty of evidences of textile impressions from other Harappan sites. So from all this, it is concluded that Harappans knew about the art of textile making. They also practiced boat making. Okay, they conducted trade overseas also, which means also Indus was their main lifeline. So they should have some facility to move through the river. So boat making was also very much known to Harappan society. Again, think about the film. In that film, towards the end of it, when the entire Mohenjo-daro is flooded with river Indus, Hrithik Roshan actually manages to create a bridge that is made of boats. Right? I mean, that is all fiction, but still, Harappans knew how to make boats. They practiced the art of boat making. Seal making and terracotta manufacturing was also known to them. We will take up that in upcoming slides in much more elaborate fashion. Jewelries of silver, gold, precious stones, etc. were also popular. Bead makers were extremely popular in Harappa. Potter's wheel was extensively used. The pottery by this time has been developed extensively, and glossy and gleaming pottery is very much characteristic of Harappan civilization. Okay, wheel-based pottery is very known to Harappans by this time. Even in the Neolithic age, we saw that some kind of pottery has started to occur, especially the ochre-colored pottery and all in Chalcolithic phase and all. So anyway, Harappans also knew about pottery. They made glossy, gleaming pottery using potter's wheel. As far as trade and commerce is concerned, the best evidence regarding this is the availability of a lot of seals from Harappa. Okay, seals has been considered as an evidence of trade. Okay. For example, if you back in those days, the quality or the whether a trade is authentic or not is actually done or validated on the basis of seals. If the seal is broken, it means that something has been tampered with. Otherwise, it is intact. So availability of a large number of seals points to the fact that there was a elaborate trade and commerce system. Uniform script. Harappans have a very uniform script. Okay, we will talk about that in the upcoming slides, but it existed. They regulated weights and measures. We have found out plenty of evidences regarding this factor also. There was standard weights and measures for measuring the value of various things. But although we have all these things, we do not come across any use of metal money. And because of this fact, historians believe that Harappan civilization focused on barter system. Okay, barter system, I think you exchange objects each other. Okay, this is the first mode of transaction in the world. Okay, it is barter system. If you have a lot of if you're a rice cultivator, you give a portion of your rice to a wheat cultivator in exchange of wheat. So exchange of commodities, that is how a barter system works. There is no standards. That is the issue with barter system. But in Harappan society, for all practical purposes, due to the lack of metallic money, historians believe that trade and commerce existed using barter system. We have evidences that Harappans were aware of the use of wheel. They also used carts with solid wheels. Okay, we have a small terracotta image or a sculpture of a cart from Harappan civilization, and the wheel is actually solid. That is very important. It is not the modern day spoke wheel. Okay, solid wheel means what? It's complete wheel. Okay, there is not. It is the whole thing is like a disc. It is not like the modern day spoked wheel. Okay, modern day we have wheels like this. Now, these are known as spoked wheels. Otherwise, it is completely covered. So we have carts with solid wheels from Harappa, but not spoked wheels. There were commercial links with Rajasthan, Afghanistan, Iran, Tigris and Euphrates basins, etc. etc. Many Harappan seals were actually discovered in Mesopotamia, which means there has been long distance trade, and which also means there has been contact between Harappan civilization and Mesopotamian civilization. Long distance trade also existed as far as precious stones are concerned. For example, lapis lazuli. Lapis lazuli is a precious stone. This has been imported by Harappans from Afghanistan. This also points to the fact that there has been a well-established trade and commerce network in Harappan civilization. In the Mesopotamian records that has been deciphered by the historians, there are certain records that refer to relations with Meluha. And historians believe that this Meluha is actually the ancient name given to the Indus region. These are inconclusive, but still, this is what historians believe. Similarly, there are other two very important terms, that is Dilmun and Makan. Historians believe that Dilmun is modern day Bahrain, okay, and Makan is the Makran coast. But all these are inconclusive, but this is what they believe. Okay, still there are debates going on regarding what exactly these terms means, but still in the NCERTs it is given as such. Meluha probably points to the Indus region and Dilmun to the Bahrain region. Okay, now we are going to talk about the social organization. We have already established the fact that there has been a hierarchy in urban habitation. Okay, we already saw the structures. We have a upper city, we have a lower city. So definitely there is a division. That is obvious. In most of the cities, although we find these two two locality divisions, there is evidence that there could be three distinct localities in Harappan cities. Okay, we have such evidences from the city of Harappa, the site of Harappa, from Kalibangan and from Dholavira. This society is divided into three divisions. So obviously one is citadel. Citadel is the place where the sovereign or the ruling class lived. At least historians believe that. Then we have the lowest town where the common people lived. And then there is a middle area. And historians believe that probably this middle level settlement has been utilized by bureaucrats and middle class merchants. Okay, even in the modern day Indian society, we have three kinds of people. We have the very rich and powerful people, we have the middle class people, and we have the poor or poorer sections of the society. So similarly, a three-pronged structure existed during that time also. And this is how it is, at least the historians classified. Citadel for the ruling class, and the middle area for the bureaucrats and middle class merchants, and the lower town for the common people. Okay, so whether this hierarchy in settlements corresponded to occupational divisions or socio-economic divisions, this is not so much clear for us. What is the basis of this division? Is it simply based on occupation, or is it based on socio-economic differentiation? Was there some kind of social discrimination or differentiation at that time? Is that the reason for this three-tiered structure of the city? This is not so much clear for us. Okay, at least we do not have any concrete evidence to align with any of these arguments. But either way, social differentiation existed and is indicated by different residential structures. Why? Because we find that some of the residential structures in Harappa have lots of rooms in them, and some of them only had a few. So if you have a house with like 2 rooms, and if you have a house with like 10 to 12 rooms, obviously the possessor of the second one is much rich compared to the first one. That is obvious, right? If you are a very rich person, you can have a very large house with multiple number of rooms. If you are not so well off, then your house will also be small. So historians have found evidence that there are houses in Harappa which are having only 1 room, some has 2 rooms, and some of them even have 10 to 12 rooms. So clearly there existed a social differentiation in Harappan society, obviously. Okay, now we are going to see about Harappan polity. But before that, any questions? No. So continuing, polity. Harappan culture is more or less uniform over a large area. Okay, so I have already told you, the Indus Valley civilization extends throughout the northern part of Indian subcontinent, all the way to the Makran coast. But what does this imply? There has been some commonality between all these areas. If there has to be that commonality, then it should also mean that there was some kind of central authority which provides for this commonality. Okay, some kind of central authority existed in Harappan civilization. We are not sure what it is, but it has existed. As already explained, there was a citadel, which is the seat of sovereign power. Then we have a middle town, that is the area where the bureaucrats and all lived. And then we have the great granary in Mohenjo-daro, which could have probably been the treasury. I already told you the taxes that were collected were put into all these granaries. So this granary would have been probably the treasury of Mohenjo-daro. So all these structures point to the fact that there has been some kind of a polity system in Harappan civilization. Taxes again were collected in the form of grains. So if you have to collect tax, then it means that there should have existed some kind of an administrative structure. Okay, but we do not know if there was a standing army or anything. Okay, if there was an organized force or not, we are not so sure about that. But a heap of sling stones and a depiction of a soldier on the potsherd at Surkotada suggests the standing army. Okay, we do not have concrete evidence to prove any of this, but we have come across a heap of sling stones. Okay, also we have come across a depiction of a soldier on a potsherd in Surkotada. So archaeologists believe that these points to the fact that there has been a military system. Some kind of standing army was there in Harappan civilization. As I have mentioned in the previous slides, there is no evidence of temples. No temples has been found in Harappan site. Absolutely nothing. No religious structures of any kind has been excavated other than Great Bath. Great Bath is the only religious structure that we have dug out. Okay, again, I'm talking about religious architectural structures, monuments. Okay, we have evidences like amulets, seals, and all. That is different. That those are small articles. But as far as major architectural structures go, Great Bath is the only structure that is connected with any kind of religious practices. Okay, absolutely no temples. So from these, we can understand that priests, were not exactly so prominent in Harappan society. This is this is something that is shown in a contradiction in the movie Mohenjo-daro. Okay, there you can, there is a priest who is very influential, given a high position, etc., etc. Okay, then you have a very big temple and all in a cave in the movie. Okay, but in reality, there is no temple at all in Harappa or in the Harappan civilization, Indus Valley civilization, and we come across no other religious structures apart from the Great Bath. Clear? So, unlike in Mesopotamia, where priests had a huge role in the polity, in Indus Valley civilization, priests did not play a vital role in political setup. Okay, Harappa was possibly ruled by a class of merchants. This is another belief that the historians have. The economy is predominantly, there is agriculture obviously. Then there is also a lot of trade and commerce. The wealthier sections should be these people, not the agriculturists. They should be the people who are aligned with trade and commerce. So historians believe that it could be a section of these merchants who actually ruled Harappa. Okay, rather than a completely political personality, it could be a group of merchants. We do not come across many weapons. Okay, and this points to the fact that there was not an established effective warrior class. Okay, lack of weapons means there is not much of a war, not much of a battle between anyone. So it also points to the fact that there does not exist a warrior class as such. Clear? So all these are these are very much based on the evidences. It is simply because that we do not have any evidence of it that we believe it did not exist. Okay, there is no other concrete evidence to prove any of these things. Now, religious practices. So, already we have established the fact that Harappans do not have a religious structure other than Great Bath. There is absolutely no evidence of a temple. But we have come across some terracotta figurines of women. Okay, some terracotta structures of women has been excavated. Then a plant is shown growing out of the embryo of a woman. Okay, we have come across another such an image where a plant is shown growing out of the embryo of a woman. So historians believe that this is actually the depiction of goddess Earth, the fertility goddess. Okay, goddess Earth has been worshipped by her. I mean, at least that is what the historians believe. Clear? But we do not know whether the Harappans were matriarchal people like the Egyptians. Egyptians were a matriarchal society. Okay, in Egyptian civilization, the daughters actually inherited the throne and the property. Okay, when the king dies, it goes to the daughter, the property as well as the throne. But we have absolutely no idea how the Harappan administrative machinery worked. Whether it was a matriarchal society or not is, we have nothing to go on with. Vedic texts, okay, in the Vedic text comes later, but in the Vedic text, it indicates a reverence for Earth goddess, although she is not given any prominence. And other goddesses such as Durga, Amba, Kali, all these goddesses come only later in the 6th century AD. So back in the Harappan times, we do not have any kind of the modern day gods and goddesses, but the only goddess that we have is probably the fertility goddess, the Mother Earth. Okay, and depicted by a terracotta figurine which is named by the historians as Mother Goddess. Clear? We do not come across, Durga, Amba, etc., etc. These goddesses comes in the picture only very late. Even in Vedic period, we come across what? Indra, Varuna, Agni, etc. It is only very late, only in the 6th century AD that we come across Durga, Kali, Lakshmi, etc., etc. Okay, so we have a mother goddess figure. So a female divinity was there. Was there a male deity? That is the next question. And historians believe that yes, a male deity also existed in Harappa. The evidence of this actually comes from a seal. Okay, the very famous seal known as the Pashupati seal or the Pashupati Mahadeva seal. Okay, in this seal, we see a 3-horned headed figure. Okay, this figure is not that clear. This has been taken from your old NCERT. That's why it's not so clear. Please Google it for a better image. Okay, so this figure is actually a 3-horned heads. Okay, a person having 3 horned heads, sitting in a posture of yogi. Okay, a yogic posture with the cross-legged position in a very like a saintly fashion and all. And this particular figure is surrounded by animals. You have elephant, you have tiger, rhinoceros, and then you also have buffalo and 2 deers. So all these animals are shown in this Pashupati Mahadeva seal, which points to the fact that Harappans knew about all these animals. Okay, earlier I told you regarding elephants, rhinoceros and all. This is how historians found out that Harappans knew about all these animals, because all of them are depicted in Harappan seals, especially in the Pashupati Mahadeva seal. Okay, so this is one evidence which points to the fact that Harappans prayed to a male deity. We also have prevalence of phallus worship. Okay, phallus worship means what? Worshipping genital organs. Okay, both male genital organ and female genital organ. So phallus worship existed back in those days. Even now, I mean, we pray to Lord Shiva. Okay, when we pray to Lord Shiva, we pray to Shiva in various forms. We have the human figure of Shiva, and we also pray to the Shivalinga form. Okay, that Shivalinga is actually a phallus model of Lord Shiva. Clear? So phallus worship has been in practice since those times, which is continued even now. Clear? Rig Veda speaks about non-Aryan people who were phallus worshippers. So that is also a pointer to the fact that there has been somebody indigenous to India who are non-Aryans who worshipped, phallus. Clear? So the Rig Veda also points to the fact that Indus Valley people, or say the non-Aryans, conducted phallus worship. Now, is it only male deities and female deities etc. that we pray to, or did we also pray to animals, trees etc. like we do in modern days? Very simple answer. Indus Valley people also pray to animals, trees etc. etc. They worship trees, obviously. We have a deity represented on a seal amidst the branches of people. Okay, so even now, even in modern day India, we worship people tree. Okay, so we have a seal back from Indus Valley civilization where a deity is shown amidst the branches of people tree. So obviously, trees were also worshipped during those times. Animals were also worshipped. One-horned animal, unicorn, which may be identified with a rhinoceros, has been worshipped. Similarly, humped bull. Already I told you, humped bull is a favorite animal of the Harappans or the Indus Valley people. So all these animals are also supposed to be worshipped. Okay, again, this is shown in the film Mohenjo-daro. There is a one-horned animal. It is shown as a unicorn in the film, but historians believe that it is some form of a rhinoceros. But either way, all these animals are worshipped by Harappans. Animals surrounding the Pashupati Mahadeva seal also points to the fact that animal worship was prevalent in Harappan times. Clear? Only difference is that gods were not placed in temples. In both contemporary civilizations, Egyptian and Mesopotamian civilization, there were temples for worship. Okay, Egyptian gods were worshipped in temples of their own. Mesopotamia also, I already told you, priests played a very important role in Mesopotamian polity. So obviously they had religious structures for worshipping. But in Harappan civilization, or sorry, in the Indus Valley civilization or Harappan culture, we do not come across any evidence of temples. So this is one thing that is very different from what we see today and back in Harappan times. We also come across amulets. Okay, what are amulets? I hope you know that. No, even now there are people who believe in putting amulets to ward away ghosts and evil forces and all. Okay, you know that, right? You go to temple and get this amulet, after all the pujas and all conducted by the priests, and you tie it around your arm or your neck or whatever. So Harappans also believed in amulets and all, and they believed in the power of these amulets to ward away ghosts and evil forces, etc., etc. So such kinds of superstitions were also prevalent during those times. Now we are going to talk about the Harappan script. But any questions? When we differentiate the Harappan culture from Harappan civilization, it can be identified from the particular sites, as Harappan culture relates with the site only and civilization had many sites. Okay. First of all, Harappan culture is something that is not exclusively in Harappa. It is the culture of the Indus Valley civilization as such. Okay, but in strictly historical, in a very theoretical history sense, okay, as if you are a very hardcore student of history, then there is a clear difference between a culture and a civilization. Okay, culture is something of a broader sense. It becomes a civilization only once the civilization aspect happens. That is, a proper script, a language, or some kind of a civilization. A civilized society has to exist. For a culture to exist, it doesn't have to be a civilization. Clear? So we can say that all civilizations are cultures, but not the other way around. Okay, not all cultures are civilizations. Civilization, the fundamental character or feature of a civilization is writing. Okay, they should know the art of writing. We can say that we can talk about Neolithic culture or Chalcolithic culture, but we can't say Neolithic civilization or Chalcolithic civilization. That is not possible. Why? Because the art of writing is missing. That is a key aspect of a civilization. Okay. Next one, we do not find war weapons or warlike situations in Harappan civilization. Do we find such situation in any contemporary civilization? I'm not exactly sure about that, but I think yes, there are weapons and all found in Egyptian civilization. I will look into it and get back to you. But in Harappa, we come across only very few tools which could be used as weapons. Okay, so we are not exactly sure that any kind of wars or battles that existed at that time. But later on, there is a theory that is developed by historians that when Aryans came, there has been a severe conflict and all. So at that time, there was a war, and eventually Aryans took over. Okay, that is one theory regarding the collapse of Harappa. So that very much arguable, but still that is one thing that some people believe in. But whether weapons existed in other civilizations, we are not sure. I am not sure. I will look into it and get back to you. But I think it did exist. Okay, especially in Egypt. Anyway, I will get back to you in the next class. Or also I will update the answer in the comment section later. Okay. Harappan script. Harappans invented the art of writing like the people of ancient Mesopotamia. Okay, Mesopotamians also knew about writing, so that is why we call it Mesopotamian civilization. Harappans also, discovered the art of or invented the art of writing. So some scholars, when they initially obtained these, scripts of Harappan civilization, Indus Valley civilization, I always say Harappan civilization. Please understand that it is not exactly right to use that phrase. Okay, it should be Harappan culture and Indus Valley civilization. But people use these terms mixed these days. That is why I am also repeatedly saying it. But technically, we have to say Harappan culture and Indus Valley civilization, not the other way around. Anyway, some scholars actually try to connect this Indus Valley script with Dravidian or Proto-Dravidian language. Okay, Dravidian kind of language exists in South India. So some historians believe that there is some connection between Indus Valley script and the Dravidian script or the Proto-Dravidian script. Some other people suggest that Indus Valley script has more in common with Sanskrit. And yet another set of people believe that it has a lot in common with Sumerian language or a connection with Sumerian language. But none of these has been conclusively proven. Or we are not satisfied with any of these theories. All these theories are inconclusive because even now Harappan script is yet to be deciphered. The script has not so far been deciphered. We have deciphered Ashokan inscriptions, we have deciphered Mesopotamian script, Egyptian script, etc., but not Harappan script. Why? Why is it so difficult to decipher Harappan script? Plenty of reasons. Most important one, Harappans did not write long inscriptions. Okay, so just think about it. If you are going to learn a language and if you come across, say 200 words, okay, that if that's all that you come across, would you be able to understand that language? You would need lengthy inscriptions in order to understand the syntax and semantics of that language, right? As far as Harappan writing is concerned, most of them were very short inscriptions, especially those that we see on seals. The lack of long inscriptions creates an inhibition or creates a resistance for the historians to understand Harappan script. So far, we have discovered around 400 pictographs. What are pictographs? Pictographs are picture-like writing. Okay, for example, you have these kinds of symbols, picture-like symbols that is a part of the Harappan alphabet. Okay, when we talk about English alphabet, what is the English alphabet? English alphabet is all these things. Letters A, B, C, D, etc. to Z constitute the English alphabet. Similarly, the Harappan, as far as Harappan alphabet is concerned, it's not exactly an alphabet. It is actually a pictograph. Certain pictures are used for resembling some kind of meaning, which is unknown to us. Okay, so Harappan script is not alphabetical, but it is largely pictographic. Understood. So English is an alphabetical language. Sanskrit is an alphabetical language. Hindi is an alphabetical language. Malayalam, Tamil, all these are alphabetical. We have alphabets resembling a sound. But in Harappan script, there is nothing called an alphabet that resembles a sound, but there are pictures that denote something. That is pictographic script. Okay. Now, we have talked about Harappan script. Next is weights and measures. So we already established the fact that there is a trade and commerce system in Harappa. So obviously, if you have to conduct trade, you have to have some standards to measure the quantity of the item that you are selling. Right. Also, if you want to collect tax, then there should be a system in order to measure the amount that is collected. So weights and measures should have existed in order for the smooth functioning of any kind of transactions. It is very interesting to understand that weighing in Harappan civilization was actually in 16 or its multiples. Okay, so 16 is a standard unit, then 64, 160, 320, 640. So multiples of 16 and 16. These were the standards of Harappan weighing system. This was practiced in India, in modern India, up till very recently. In the Indian setup, 16 annas constituted 1 rupee. Okay, I mean, you can ask your parents. Okay, even in your parents' time, this anna system was very prevalent. Now it's not there. Now the lowest denomination in India is 50 paise. But in your parents' childhood, you can ask them, there was this coin called anna, and 16 annas constituted 1 rupee. Okay, so this system of 16 as the base started way back from the time of Indus Valley civilization itself. Harappans knew the art of measurement also. Okay, and the best example to prove this is the finding of sticks inscribed with measures. Okay, we have found plenty of sticks that is actually inscribed with certain measurement markings. And one of these was actually found made of bronze. There could have been sticks that is made of simply wooden sticks and all that would have disintegrated long time back. But we find certain such measuring yards made of bronze which have survived over time. And when historians came across these, they understood that there was a proper measurement system that existed during Harappan times. Next comes pottery. There has been great expertise in the use of potter's wheel. Okay, already I think I have mentioned this. Potter's wheel was very common by now, and the great expertise was shown in potter's wheel. Specimens are all red and include Dishon stand. Okay, Dishon is a kind of pottery. I mean, it's like using a potter's wheel. You can create various kinds of shapes and objects and all. And most of them that has been found are red in color. Okay, then it also included a dish on stand. That is a particular kind of arrangement. Numerous pots has been found painted with variety of designs. One example is shown in this particular figure. Variety of designs has been seen. Majority of these decorations are with the designs of trees and circles. We also find some designs made of human figures. Images of men also figure in some of the pottery fragments. But majority designs were actually made of trees as well as geometric patterns, especially circles. Now comes the most interesting or the most promising area of Harappan civilization, that is seals and sealings. Greatest artistic creation of Harappan culture are seals. Historians have found around 2000 seals. So seals are the most important of all Harappan findings. Why? Because it gives us a lot of information. There are plenty of depictions inside a seal, plenty of writing inside a seal. I mean, not lengthy writings or anything, but still every seal is inscribed with some kind of pictograph. And we have abundance of it. We have around 2000 seals to start with. So this gives historians a better, better amount of data to go on with, unlike other things. All right. So all these seals, at least almost all these seals, include short inscriptions with pictures of one-horned animals called, say, unicorns, buffaloes. Then tigers are there, rhinoceros are there, goats, elephants, antelopes, even crocodiles. You can see an example of a seal here. Some other examples are given here also. Each of these seals have some kind of an animal, whatever it is. There is also some pictographic feature, inscription that represents something. We are not able to identify what it is. But either way, all of them has an animal, at least almost all of them has an animal and some kind of inscription. This is a common pattern in Harappan seals. Seals were made of steatite or fanes. These were the common materials used for making seals. It is not mud or clay or anything. It is actually steatite. Okay, most of them are made of steatite or fanes. And they served as symbols of authority. Why? Just like modern day. Modern day also, it is, it's officers and, powerful people that actually uses a seal. In your school, it is a principal who, seals it, give you a seal of the school and all, right? Similarly, if you go to an office, the officer stamps your seal. In a bank, it is officiating staff who seals it. Okay, so seals are associated with symbols of authority. So obviously, historians believe that there existed such a authority figure even back then. And obviously, the seals were used for stamping. There are few stamped objects called sealings in contrast to Egypt and Mesopotamia. So in Egypt and Mesopotamia also we come across seals. What are sealings? Sealings are the impressions of seal. Once you put the seal, then that impression happens in somewhere, right? So these stamped objects are known as sealings. We do not find any of that sort in Mesopotamia or Egypt, but we find a lot of sealings in Indus Valley civilization. Historians also believe that seals were also used as amulets. Okay, seals were also sometimes used as amulets. Now comes images. Plenty of images. Okay, very beautiful images of metal has been found from Harappa, particularly on bronze. Women dancer made of bronze is the best specimen, and she, apart from wearing a necklace, is presented as a naked figure. Okay, so obviously we have evidence of beautiful images made of metal. Few pieces of Harappan stone sculpture has also been found. So metallic sculptures are there. Stone sculptures are also found. One striated statue wears an ornamented robe passing over the left shoulder under the right arm like a shawl, and the short locks at the back of the head are held in place by a woven fillet. This is another example. Okay, I do not have the figure here. It's not given in your textbook. That's why it's not there. You can Google it. You can find this image where there is a particular statue made of steatite, where the robe goes over the left shoulder like a shawl, and you can see some short locks at the back of the head. Where all this held in place using a woven fillet. So basically, what I'm trying to establish here is all these evidences point to the fact that Harappans knew about the art of images. Terracotta figurines. Obviously, Harappans knew about terracotta figurines. We have come across plenty of terracotta figurines. Many figurines made of fire-baked earthen clay or modern day terracotta has been obtained from Harappa. Some of them are actually toys, okay, used as toys. Some of them were used as objects of worship. That is also true. We have come across the mother goddess. The figure of mother goddess is actually made of terracotta. So those are religious figurines. There are toys also. There's a terracotta figure of a cart, a toy cart. Okay, then birds, dogs, sheep, cattle, monkey, men, women. So plenty of terracotta figurines has been identified. Seals and images were manufactured with great skill, but terracotta pieces represent unsophisticated artwork. Okay, that is a very curious thing. In the inscriptions that of the seals that we saw, just look at these images. Very beautifully carved, right? The horns of this animal, etc., are very pointed, very beautifully carved. Lots of effort has been put into these, seals and all. Okay, but then look at this mother goddess figure. A very crude figure, not at all, not much artistic work is put into it. Look at the face that is created, it's not at all sophisticated. It's more like a very easygoing kind of figure, very crude kind of figure. Okay, from this, it is very clearly understood that there is a gap between the classes that utilized them. So obviously, the seals were utilized by the higher sections, the influential sections, or the authority figures in the society. And these kinds of terracotta, toys and all were common man's thing. So authority figures used objects that were very well, made, into which lots of effort has been put, and the common man used very crude images and all. So that social gap between the classes that used these things are very visible from the artisanal work of all these figurines. Stonework. We did not come across much stonework in Harappa and Mohenjo-daro because stone could not be procured from either of these sites. Okay, we do not have much of a stone. Most of it is terracotta, clay, etc., etc. Stone is not so prevalent here. So we do not come across much stone structures. That doesn't mean there is no stone structure. Very less, comparatively very less. But there is some in Dholavira. Dholavira in the Kutch region. The citadel of Dholavira is actually built of stone. Okay, I already told you there is a citadel in most cities of Harappa. So in Dholavira, we have a citadel that is completely made of stone. So this is a one exception regarding the stone structures in Harappan civilization, Indus Valley civilization. Clear? And dressed stone is used in masonry with mud bricks. So in Dholavira, we come across stone structures and masonry with mud bricks and all. We do not find much of a stone structure in Harappa or Mohenjo-daro. Stone slabs is used in 3 types of burials in Dholavira. Okay, stone slabs are used in 3 types of burials in Dholavira, and in one of these, above the grave, there is a circle of stones resembling a megalithic stone structure. In the previous class, we studied about megaliths. Okay, the burial practice which was very prevalent in South India, where the people are, once they are buried, they are covered in using a huge stone. So megaliths are almost always associated with burials, especially in a South Indian context. So here in Dholavira, we come across certain kinds of burials, and in one of those, we find that above the graves, there is a circle of stones erected in a megalithic stone fashion, which probably points to the resemblance with the South Indian culture that existed at that time. Now to the final topic for the day: origin, maturity, and end of Harappan civilization. Okay, again, I'm sticking with this particular textbook and I'm not referring to any other textbook while I'm taking this chapter. So as far as the UPSC candidate is concerned, additionally, apart from everything that I have so far mentioned, you have to study individual sites and the archaeological findings from that site. For example, the statue of the dancing girl, where did we obtain that? We got it from Mohenjo-daro. So you have to identify the site from where that is got. Similarly, beads, dockyard, fire altars, all these are associated with a particular Harappan site. So which is that site and what is that object or structure? That is very important. Please study it in a prelims point of view. You can easily Google it and get the entire list. Okay, that is available in Google. I will try to find out one myself, and if possible, I will share it in the Telegram channel. Alright, so keep an eye on my Telegram channel also. The link is given here. It is also there in the YouTube description section. Please follow that channel for updated notes and all. Any questions so far? Art of images, art of sculpture, not exactly the same. Okay, I mean, yeah, here the words are used as almost the same. Okay, in this particular chapter in the textbook, images is used more or less in tandem with sculpture, but there is a slight difference. Actually, in modern day sense, images are like 2D paintings or 3D paintings or whatever, and sculpture is a structure. Okay, but in this textbook, or as far as the Harappan context is concerned, we can say that certain embossments, okay, made on metallic surface and all that can be considered as images. Clear? So, right now we have something called the embossed kind of painting, right? And not exactly the same, but we have metal embossing and all these things. So similar things can be classified as images for the purpose of this chapter. Okay, I mean there is some wordplay here, but it is slightly different, and in modern day sense it is completely different. Okay. Anyway, origin, maturity, and end. So major Harappan culture happened between 2500 and 1900 BC. This is the rough estimate. The major Harappan culture means this is the time when Harappan society flourished. The peak of Harappa happened between 2500 BC and 1900 BC, around 600 years. Clear? And throughout this time period, they retained the same kind of tools, same kind of weapons, same fashion of houses, same lifestyle. Almost everything remained very much similar throughout this period. There has been changes only in certain fields, especially in the field of pottery. In pottery, we find some changes over time, but more or less otherwise, there has been this homogeneity throughout Harappan society in the peak time or the mature time of Harappa. By Harappa, I mean Indus Valley civilization. By 19th century BCE, Harappa and Mohenjo-daro disappeared. So the two most prominent cities in Harappan civilization, Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, declined by 19th century BCE. Okay, so why did they decline? What was the reason of the decline of these two cities? It is not exactly proven or anything. Okay, we are not exactly sure what caused it. It is difficult to account for. Some historians believe that there could be obviously an environmental factor. That is very true. Environmental factor can lead to the decline of a city. Say for example, Yamuna and Satluj moved away from Saraswati or the Hakra in 1700 BC. Okay, Hakra river, which was a very prominent one in the Harappan region, it was supplied water. Okay, Hakra is Saraswati, both are same. Okay, and this river was actually supplied water by Yamuna and Satluj. And due to the environmental and tectonic reasons, Yamuna and Satluj moved away from Saraswati. So thereby Saraswati became dry. So the Hakra river disappeared. And this caused water shortage, etc., and loss of productivity, loss of irrigational facilities, etc., and led to the decline of Harappan civilization. So this is one argument made by historians. Problem is that how can an entire civilization disappear because one river stopped having water? That is the question. Okay, I mean, if one particular city disappears because of absence of a river, it is understandable. Yeah, that city was entirely dependent on that river, and when the river dried up, the city also lost its prominence. But a civilization that was larger than Egyptian civilization or Mesopotamian civilization, which probably covered the entire North Indian subcontinent, how can the whole thing disappear because of a lack of one river? That is a very curious question. Then there is another argument that rainfall decreased. Could be true. Lots of natural vegetation was cut down to extend agriculture due to the wild grazing for use of fuel, etc., etc. So this lack of vegetation, eventually led to a semi-arid and eventually a arid kind of situation, which reduced the rainfall considerably, and water shortage led to a lack of everything else, and the civilization collapsed. That is one other argument that is put forth by historians. Another argument is the dam formation, okay, especially in Mohenjo-daro. If you remember the climax of that film Mohenjo-daro, again you can understand this. Okay, the people of Mohenjo-daro, they built a huge dam and it's collapsed at some point of time and it flooded the entire city of Mohenjo-daro, and that is how that film ends. Okay, so this is another argument that was actually put forth by the historians. Could be true, not sure, but that is another explanation. But that explains how Mohenjo-daro collapsed. That does not explain how Indus Valley civilization vanished. Okay, that is attributed to one city. What about the rest? Another more advanced theory is the failure of human activities. This is very much argued. Okay, this is a very advanced theory, much more believable compared to the rest that we have spoken about. Failure of human activities. For example, craft and commerce collapsed because of the sudden end of long distance trade with Mesopotamia. So between Indus Valley civilization and the Mesopotamian civilization, around 2000 BC, there arose a new power called Elam. Okay, and this newly arisen power hindered the trade between Indus Valley civilization and Mesopotamian civilization. Clear? So this trade or this commerce actually came to an end. It affected the crafts and commerce of people, etc., etc. It affected the merchant sections of the city, etc., etc. So in general, there was a failure of human activity in the Harappan or the Indus Valley civilization. So this is one possible argument for decline and collapse of Harappa. Alright, then another obvious argument, exhaustion of soil. Due to the intensive agriculture again and again and again, etc., due to the lack of proper rainfall, due to the rivers drying up, because natural vegetations were cut down, all these reasons eventually contributed to the exhaustion of soil, which resulted in lower yield of agriculture and probably even collapse of the agriculture, which led to the collapse of the civilization as such. Anyway, the Harappan culture seems to have flourished until 1900 BCE. Okay, somehow Harappan civilization in its peak continued to flourish until 1900 BC. From that point onwards, we see something known as a post-urban phase of Harappan culture. Until very recently, historians called this phase as post-Harappan feature. Okay, post-Harappan culture. It is not exactly post-Harappan culture. It is post-urban phase of Harappan culture. Okay, it is Harappan culture only, but it's a post-urban phase. I hope you understood the difference. Clear? And this is primarily Chalcolithic. This is a section we studied yesterday. So this post-urban Harappan culture is primarily Chalcolithic for all practical purposes. Instead of cities and towns, here we have villages. We studied all this yesterday, okay? Try to remember. We have villages instead of cities. We have a rural setup instead of a town folk. Subsistence agriculture, stock raising, hunting, fishing. So back to the Lithic ages. Okay, we have typical Chalcolithic character is observed in post-urban Harappan societies. Clear? But there has been some descendants of the major Harappan society in certain parts of the country. For example, the Prabhas Patan in Somnath and Rangpur, both are in Gujarat. Okay, in these areas, we find direct descendants of the Harappan culture. These both are in Gujarat, here we see direct descendants of Harappan culture. Ahar is actually a place in Rajasthan. We saw this yesterday. Okay, and in Ahar, only a few Harappan elements are found. So, once the major phase of Harappan civilization is over, in some parts of the previously Harappan society, we can see certain descendants of Harappan culture and all. But in others, we see only very few influences of Harappa. Another one, Gilund, again in Rajasthan. In Gilund, we find brick structures. Burnt bricks have not been found anywhere else except perhaps in the late Harappan phase of Bhagwanpura in Haryana. Another very curious factor. Harappans used burnt bricks a lot. For example, the Great Bath, the floor of Great Bath in Mohenjo-daro was actually made of burnt bricks. We already spoke about that. But once the major phase of Harappan civilization is over, we find use of burnt bricks only in very few places. One is Gilund and one is Bhagwanpura in Haryana. Except for these places, we do not come across much of burnt bricks at all. Few Harappan elements are to be found in Chalcolithic cultures of Malwa, which had its highest or largest settlement at Navdatoli. We talked about the Malwa culture yesterday in a bit, not extensively, but some. Okay, so Navdatoli, one of these major centers of the Malwa culture, which is again a subtype of the Chalcolithic culture. Here we can find some elements of Harappan culture. Same is true for the numerous Jorwe cultures. Okay, yesterday we studied about Jorwe culture, which existed in the Maharashtra and adjacent regions. And here we can find again some of the Harappan influences. So a question, if you have listened to my previous class, you should be able to answer. Which is the largest Jorwe site? Okay, out of all the sites having Jorwe culture, which one is the largest? You have, please, if you know the answer, put it in the YouTube live chat. Okay, but anyway, Harappans in general, by this time in the late phase, we come across the use of black, grey, burnished ware. Okay, black, grey, burnished ware pottery has been extensively found during this time. Swat Valley may be regarded as the northernmost outpost of late Harappan culture. So Harappan culture ended by 1900 BCE, and the flourishing phase ended by then. Swat Valley, out of the late Harappan phase, which existed after that, Swat Valley may be considered as the northernmost endpoint. Okay, earlier it was Shivalik, don't forget. Now it has reduced. Okay, Harappans took to rice when they came to Daulatpur in Haryana and Hulas in Sahranpur district of UP. So that is again, if you remember that film, if you remember the film Mohenjo-daro, once that city was gone, people started moving towards east. And in that film, they come in towards the bank of the river Ganges. Okay, where Hrithik Roshan sees that animal once again and all. Alright. And in that film, that river is shown as Ganga. So we have, historians believe that there has been a movement or migration of Harappans towards eastern part of the country in the later phases, and after the Harappan civilization, Indus Valley civilization collapsed. Ragi or finger millet is not so far known to have been grown in Himalayan site in north of India. We do not come across ragi or finger millet. Okay, in the northern part of India. In Alangarpur, these are individual points, study it, by heart it, that's it. Okay, there is no story here. These are individual points useful for prelims. In Alangarpur, the late Harappans probably produced cotton. We already established this fact. Harappans knew about cotton and they knew about weaving and all. In late Harappan phase also, cotton was produced. Okay, and we can conclude this by pointing to the fact that we have evidence of cloth impression on Harappan pottery. From that impression, it is identifiable that Harappans knew about cotton, even in the late phase. In the post-urban Harappan phase, no object for measuring length can be found. Earlier, we spoke about weights and measures. We found a stick where measurements are made. But in the late Harappan phase, we do not come across any such kind of measurements. In Gujarat, we find some cubical stone weights and terracotta cakes, but they are absent in the later period. Okay, we find certain cubical stones of weights and terracotta cakes, etc., in Gujarat. But in the late Harappan phase, these are also absent. So we do not come across anything that is associated with weights and measurements in the late Harappan phase. All these points to the decline of economy, decline of trade and commerce, etc. Okay, if the trade and commerce were flourishing, then these systems of standards should have existed. Lack of all these things points to the fact that there has been considerable decline in all these aspects of life. Generally, all post-Harappan sites lack human figurines and the characteristic painted designs. Art and culture also declined in Harappa. Okay, we do not come across any human figurines at all. There is a lack of characteristic painted designs that used to be there in Harappa. We talked about various kinds of geometric designs of trees and all, right? Everything is lacking in post-Harappan phase. Sorry, post-urban Harappan phase. All these points to the fact that there has been a complete decline in all walks of life. This is what is very curious. Okay, civilization cannot vanish just because a river flooded or just because a river dried up. Something extensively has happened. What is it is very curious. There is no conclusive proof of what happened to Harappa. Some people say it is because of the raid conducted by Aryans. Some resort to the flooding theory. Some resort to the river drying up theory. Some resort to the total lack of proper administration. What is the real reason is very much inconclusive. All these arguments are very much still prevalent. Okay, so let me see if there are any questions. No knowledge of painting as Mesolithic. I mean, no. I mean, not like that. That kind of things were there. Okay, I mean, like in pottery and all, even in Mesolithic times, we have minimal paintings and all. Though those things existed. I am talking about this particular textbook where I talked about that particular slide. Okay, we were talking about figurines made of stone and as well as metal. And the title was images. That's what I was talking about. The similar kind of Paleolithic, Mesolithic kind of paintings. All those still continue. Elam was a new civilization, not a civilization as such, but it is a major power that arose during those times. Okay, I mean, yeah, you can call it a civilization because it is very close to Mesopotamia and all, and they were very powerful ruling class at that time, powerful society at that time. So yeah, definitely. But we don't study it in a similar fashion as Indus Valley civilization or Mesopotamian civilization or whatever. But we had a country that is blocking all these things between two major civilizations. And yeah, Daimabad is the correct answer. The largest of the Jorve cultures is actually Daimabad. That is correct. Very good. Okay, Satya. Anyway, continuing. We only 2 more slides, okay? So please be patient. We are almost at the end of today's chapter. I know these are all dry topics, okay? These are all very, very, point-to-point kind of topics. There is no story as such until now. But please, these are very important for your UPSC, so please do study it. Read the textbook. These chapters in the textbook are very small, so please take your time to read it yourself. It will be definitely useful for you. You can use these notes for revision, but at least read it from the textbook once. Very quick reading is fine. Okay. Now, Harappan cities are indicative of well-planned growth, but their Mesopotamian counterparts show haphazardous growth. So these are comparisons between Harappa and other civilizations that existed contemporaneously. Okay. In Harappa, we have evidences of well-planned growth, grid pattern, well-maintained drainage system, etc. But in Mesopotamia, the growth is very much haphazardous. It's a scrambled, okay, not well planned or anything like Harappa, not even close. Town planning is not evident in cities of Western Asia at all. So this shows the superiority of Harappan civilization among other contemporary societies. No other people in antiquity has built such an excellent drainage system except perhaps the Crete in Knossos. Drainage system in Harappa, we already talked about it. It is not an open drainage system. It is covered with stones or slabs and all. So a very well properly maintained drainage system existed in Harappa. No other civilization of those times had this except maybe for Crete in Knossos. Crete is actually a part of the Greeks. Okay, Greek civilization. And this is one exception where there also you can see very well organized drainage system. But nowhere else can we find such excellence in drainage systems. Okay. Nor did the people of Western Asia show such skill in the use of burnt bricks. Again, use of burnt bricks is very much typical for Harappan features. Earlier we saw that Mesopotamians used mud bricks. Okay, so Egyptians also. So burnt bricks were not, I mean, they used burnt bricks, but not as extensively or as sophisticated as Harappans did it. Clear? Harappans produced their own characteristic pottery and seals, invented their own script, which neither resembled Egyptian or Mesopotamian. Harappan script has no resemblance with Egyptian or Mesopotamian scripts. That is one of the reasons why it is yet to be deciphered. Clear? So they did this all indigenously. All this points to the fact that Indus Valley civilization was a very well advanced society. Okay, because all these are indigenous, it is their own script. It is not borrowed from someone else. They developed it on their own. Their pottery, their seals, everything was their own. All these points to the advancements achieved by the Harappan civilization. No contemporary culture spread over such a wide area as did the Harappans. Again, correct. Egyptian civilization is concentrated in the modern day Egyptian region. Mesopotamian concentrated in the Central Asian region, comparatively smaller. But Indus Valley civilization existed in a huge expanse of land, which covers plenty much, all the north and northwestern portion of modern day Indian subcontinent. In the late Harappan phase of culture, in the late phase of Harappan culture, we find some exotic tools and pottery. Okay, in the flourishing phase or in the mature phase of Harappa, we do not come across anything like this. But in the later phase, when the civilization started to collapse, we came across some exotic tools and pottery. This happened around 1700 BC. Okay, somewhere around 1700 BC. So what does this tell us? This tells us that there has been some kind of percolation of new peoples into Indus Valley region. Okay, exotic means what? Exotic means something foreign. Okay, I mean, right now we speak about water hyacinth. Water hyacinth is an exotic plant that is causing all kinds of troubles for native indigenous water species. Okay, so during those times, we find exotic tools that is not indigenous to Harappa, which points to the fact that there has been certain peoples coming from some other parts of the world and percolating into the Harappan society. And around this time, we also see signs of insecurity and violence. And what are these signs? We find that jewelry was buried. Okay, when do people bury their jewelry, or when do people put their jewels in safety? Whenever there is a threat, right? I mean, if you are if you go in a train, or if you are going to travel long distance at night, would you wear very costly ornaments and jewelry? No, you will keep it safe at home or in a bank locker or whatever, right? So you will try to protect valuable things whenever there is a threat. Correct? So if the jewelry was very safely buried, then it points to the fact that there is somebody at your door, some threat is there. Similarly, we find skulls were huddled together in a particular region. Human skulls. So this also points to the fact that there has been some kind of violence around this time. So in the late Harappan phase, we find all these things. This is one of the reasons why some historians argue that arrival of Aryans caused the decline of Harappan society. There is no archaeological evidence of any mass-scale confrontation between late Harappans and Indo-Aryans. This is again another issue. We find these skulls etc. huddled in one place together, but that does not mean there is no other evidence that proves there is a mass-scale confrontation. Clear? It is a very huge site, okay, larger than Egyptian or Mesopotamian, etc., etc. So if we find many molds in different parts of the country, of the civilization, then yes, we can understand that there has been a huge confrontation between Indus Valley people and the Indo-Aryan people. But there is no archaeological evidence that points to this. Clear? Just because we found some skulls in one area does not mean that Aryans came and killed everyone else. Okay, that is very rash decision, and that is very much inconclusive also. In the northern part of Balochistan, in a site called Rahman Deri, Okay, they are developed as the earliest town with planned roads and houses. So this is about the origin. Rahman Deri is the first site or probably the earliest town which had planned roads and houses. This is around 7000 BC, predecessor of Indus Valley. Okay, so early Harappan and major Harappan cultures developed from Baluchistan settlements. So in Baluchistan, in a place called Rahman Deri, developed the earliest towns with planned roads and houses. So that is the beginning. From there, Harappans actually originated, and the early Harappan developments and the major Harappan developments, etc., has their origin in this particular area. And around 3000 to 2000 BC, we have evidence of both heavy rain and a substantial flow of water into the Indus and its tributary Saraswati, identified with the dried up Hakra river in Sindh. Okay, again, these are certain extra points that we find in the end of the chapter. Not much important, but we have evidence of very heavy rain and substantial flow of water, etc. in 3000 to 2000 BC. So during these times, Harappan civilization still flourished very well. Okay, the late Harappan phase begins in 1900 BC, 100 years after all these things. Alright, so sometimes the Indus culture is also known as Saraswati culture. This is the reason. Saraswati river was very vital to Harappan civilization, Indus Valley civilization. And for this purpose, sometimes, although it may not be politically correct, Indus Valley civilization or Indus culture, Harappan culture is also called as Saraswati culture. But the flow of the water in the Harappan Hakra was the contribution of Yamuna and Satluj. We already spoke about this. Yamuna and Satluj used to provide waters to the Hakra river, but due to some tectonic activities or whatever, the course of these two rivers actually went to a different side, and it led to the drying up of Hakra river, causing some issues in Indus Valley civilization. Sometimes historians call Harappan culture as Rigvedic. Okay, so the principal features do not figure in Rigveda. That is very curious. Although it is called Rigvedic by some historians, it does not have, none of its features are actually figured in the textbook of Rigveda. Early people lived on cattle rearing, early Vedic people lived on cattle rearing supplemented by agriculture, and they did not use bricks. Harappans did everything opposite. Okay, they also had agriculture, yes, they also had cattle rearing, yes, but they did use bricks a lot. So there are clear differences between Rigvedic times or the Vedic times and Harappan culture. So we cannot exactly call Harappan culture as Rigvedic. Okay, but some historians do call it. Okay, from this textbook, that is what you have to take away. Some historians still do call Harappan culture as Rigvedic. The reasons are as follows. Okay, the problem is there is no principal feature of Harappa that is depicted in Rigveda. What are the principal features of Harappan society? Town planning, drainage system, use of burnt bricks. All these are the typical features of Harappan society. Nothing of this sort is depicted in Rigveda. That is the limitation of this argument. Alright. Harappan and Vedic people are not aware of exactly the same plants and animals. That is another thing. Vedic people are aware of horse. But as far as Harappans are concerned, domestication of horse is unproven. Similarly, Rigveda mentions only barley, but Harappans knew about wheat, sesame, peas, many other crops. Rhinoceros was known to Harappans but unknown to early Vedic people. Same is true for tiger. Harappans knew about tiger, early Vedic people did not know about tiger. So there are plenty of differences between Harappan and the early Vedic society. Vedic chiefs were horse-centered. Okay, they rode on horses and all. Vedic chiefs, horses were very predominant by that time. But they were hardly known to any Harappan urban centers. Indus script has not been deciphered so far, but no Indo-Aryan inscriptions of Vedic times have been found in India. Again, very curious. No Indo-Harappan inscriptions. Very important. Sorry, no Indo-Aryan inscriptions of Vedic times has been found in India, but we have Indus script. Indus script existed before Aryan times. That is still available to us. But in the Aryan times, we do not see any inscriptions at all. Alright, we have no clear idea about the languages of Harappans, though the Indo-Aryan language spoken by Vedic people continues in variety of forms. I hope you understood the difference. There is a difference between script and language. These two are different things. Okay, language is most closely related to the sound. Okay, now what I am speaking now is English. That is the English language. The script is the representation, alphabetical representation. This is the script. The sound, the thing that I am speaking, that is the language. So once again, I am going to tell the last point. Indus script is available. So Harappan civilization, the script of Indus Valley civilization is available even now, but we do not come across any such inscriptions from Vedic times. But the language of Indus Valley civilization is not known to us, but Indo-Aryan language is spoken by Vedic people and it continues in South Asia in variety of forms. Sanskrit, Hindi, and such many other derivative languages. I hope you understood the difference. There's a difference between script and language. If you understand this, you understand the last point. Okay, now the final slide for the day, a conclusion. Before that, let me take some questions if there is any. Even if Indus Valley civilization was an urban civilization, can we say that concept of state was still absent there? That is what I told you. There's in a modern day sense, yes. I mean, modern day, according to theoretical history, technically, if a particular area is known as a state, then it has to satisfy some conditions. Okay, X number of conditions are there and all has to be satisfied. So in that sense, you can say that, okay, one of the typical signs of a state is territorial sovereignty. Clear? So in Harappa, we know that there existed some kind of administrative structure and some kind of authority figure and all, but we can't say that the entire thing was ruled by a strong monarchy or strong democracy or anything. We do not know the nature of a state existed during the time of Harappa. It is a very gray area and historians are not conclusive about that factor. Alright, but obviously there should have been some kind of administrative structure that is there. Okay, because of the commonalities that we see in all the Harappan sites and because of how the cities flourished, etc., etc. Without proper regulation and checks, it cannot have happened. But can we call it as a modern day state? Probably not. Alright. When Indus Valley civilization flourished in Indian subcontinent, do we find any such civilization in Europe? Greeks, for example, I don't know if it is contemporaneous. Okay. We already talked about Egyptian civilization. Then Mesopotamia is in Central Asia. Europe, I think Greeks were there. But again, timeline, how much does it superimpose? I'm not sure. We have to look at the exact timeline in order to answer that. Again, I will put it in the comment section or I will get back to you in the next class. Okay, I think it is not exactly contemporaneous, but towards the end of Harappa, by the time Greeks were there, I think. I'm not sure. I will look into it and get the answer. Anyway, conclusion. Some scholars speak about the continuity of Harappan culture and others of its change from urbanization to de-urbanization. Okay, some scholars believe that even after the major phase of Harappa was over, still the civilization continued in some form. Okay, some kind of a culture, I mean, may not be flourishing or anything, but still it continued and into something new. But some other historians believe that the character of it completely changed. Rather than an urbanized system, it became a very de-urbanized kind of process. Alright. It is said that Harappan culture continued in the Gangetic Plains. Okay, this is one of the basis of the ending of the movie Mohenjo-daro. Again, I already told you, Hrithik Roshan moves towards the and finally reaches the river of Ganga. Okay, so this is one argument that gives basis for that ending of the movie. Harappan culture continued in the Gangetic Plains. Earlier, Harappans couldn't move towards Central India. Why? Because Central India was extremely fertile region having heavy forest growth. It is not possible to clear those forests using copper and bronze tools. You need something like iron. And iron was completely unknown to Harappans. But towards the end of Harappan civilization, once the iron started coming up, it was possible for the people to migrate and move towards Central Indian heavily and thickly forested regions. And eventually, Harappan culture continued in the Gangetic Plains. No important Harappan feature appears in the painted grey ware culture. PGW culture is actually, we'll talk about this later. PGW culture is actually a Iron Age thing. Okay, the kind of pottery is actually associated with the phase in history. Okay, we have ochre colored pottery, which is associated with Chalcolithic period. We have red, painted red ware, etc., etc. Red and black ware. We have painted grey ware. We have northern black polished ware. All these kinds of potteries are associated with particular time periods. And painted grey ware culture is something that is associated with Iron Age. Okay, and in this culture, painted grey ware culture, there is no important Harappan feature. No town planning, no brickwork, nothing. Once the Harappan culture ended, writing came into currency during NBPW phase in the form of Brahmi script. So there is a gap. NBPW is again a part of the Iron Age, okay, and that is northern black polished ware. It came during the time of Iron Age. And the next writing after the Harappan writing that we see in history is the Brahmi script that came during the time of NBPW, later in the Vedic periods and all. I mean, very later, okay, not in the Indo-Aryan times, but during the time of NBPW. Between that time periods, we do not come across any writings or anything. Clear? It was, however, written from left to right, whereas Harappan script was written from right to left. Clear? In time of NBPW, it is Brahmi script written from left to right, like our modern day writing. If this is a book page, we write from left side to right side in this direction. But Harappan script were written from right to left in this fashion. Sometimes in cuneiform also. What is cuneiform writing? Cuneiform writing is not much here, but it is more closely associated with Ashokan times and all. This is another type of writing. Generally, Harappan typing is associated with right to left writing, as shown here. Cuneiform writing, for your extra information, is a process of writing where you start and goes like this. Understood? In one row, you will write from left to right. In the next one, from right to left. Then again from left to right. Then again to from right to left. So and so. That kind of writing is known as cuneiform writing. Okay. Moving on. Effective use of iron in the NBPW phase gave rise to a new socio-economic structure in the mid-Gangetic plains in 5th century. Again, I already told you. Effective use of iron was one of the primary reasons why people at that time were able to clear the very thickly forested Ganga region. And once iron started to become very prominent, the lifestyle, the socio-economic structure, everything came to a new levels, and it began to evolve in the 5th century BC in the mid-Gangetic plains. And we will study about the Mahajanapadas and all in the upcoming chapters, and that time you will understand it more. Certain states like Magadha, etc. came to power, Ujjain, etc. all came into very much power because of the availability of iron. Okay, you just think about it. Magadha was located in the Bihar region, and there are plenty of iron, Bihar is an iron ore region, and due to the availability of large quantities of iron, Magadha was able to produce much better tools and weapons and all these things, and they became the most powerful among all the Mahajanapadas. That we will study in the upcoming chapters, but this is the reason. Effective use of iron. It appears that after the end of urban Harappan culture in 1900 BC, there was some give and take between Indo-Aryans and the existing cultures. Okay, when these people, Indo-Aryans, came to this region, there has been obviously some give and take. Okay, just like the Islamic people coming to India in the medieval times, when Indo-Aryans came in earlier periods, some traits of the Harappan society was taken by them, and some of their traits was taken by Harappa. So there was some kind of intermingling and evolution of some kind of a composite culture. The Munda and Proto-Dravidian languages are attributed to the Harappans continue. Okay, Munda and Proto-Dravidian languages, very old kind of languages, very primitive. These languages are actually attributed to Harappans, and this continues for a very long time. And through the interaction, both the Aryan and pre-Aryan languages also got enriched. This always happens. Okay, just think about it. When Islamic people came to India, the Persian was their main language. Here it was Sanskrit. There were lots of give and takes and all. And Urdu, Hindi, all these languages were developed around medieval times. South Indian language such as Telugu also, Telugu, Tamil, etc. also got development. So this interaction and intermingling between various cultures leads to the evolution of rich and composite new cultures that is also visible in ancient times. Okay, so we will talk about Aryans, early Vedic age, and know their lifestyle, etc., how they were different from Harappans and all these things in the next chapter, which will be taken in the upcoming class, day after tomorrow. Okay, so today's class is over. Any questions? NBPW second urbanization, yes, that we will talk. Okay, I mean, second urbanization period happens later on, Mahajana Padas and all, that we will study in the upcoming chapters. At that time, I will explain it to you. I did not want to talk about second urbanization much now because it will all be very confusing. First urbanization happened in the Indus Valley civilization. Okay, second urbanization in the upcoming chapters, I will explain in detail. So thank you all for joining. Please like this video. Please subscribe to my channel and share with your friends so that I can get more viewers and subscriptions. I will upload the PDFs of these classes in the Telegram channel here. The link is given in the YouTube description section. Please follow me there. If you have any questions, you can ask me personally, put as a message in the WhatsApp or in Instagram also. The link is given underneath. WhatsApp number is given in the Telegram channel. You can take it from there. Alright, so thank you all for joining. Okay, Sri Sindhil Devi, Tamil Selvan, Satya Pandey. Okay, so see you again day after tomorrow. Until then, bye bye.